All right, this is it. This is the episode where my ego is so huge and inflated that I got to take up half the screen with my giant head now. This is actually in response. Somebody said that it helps them to be able to see me talking. I thought, why? Because they, they can they have two options. They can either really crank up their speakers on their thing, or they can try to read my lips. So I'm going to do my best. So I'm going to do my best to try to enunciate as clear as I can, he says, while covering his mouth halfway through a sentence. So anyways, hi, how are you? Yesterday we had a one-page suggestion. Super keen, super fun. It's I'll bring it up. Yesterday's suggestion was Richard Simmons dealing with the Cheshire Cat. So that's what we did. And get rid of him. So the idea. I'm sorry for cutting over here. Now you can't see me at all. That's fine. Come on, Corbin. The co-stars just joined me. So the suggestion was Richard Simmons dealing with the Cheshire Cat, and this is our finished page. It was, give me 1 second. The original is just a single sheet of 11 by 17. So I drew all of the elements on that, and then there's little things that I went through and did to change it up. Now I drew the cats directly on the page yesterday, and there's a light pencil line that's in there for the panels, but when I went into the computer program and I punched it up a little bit, hey, Jim Luan's joined us. Hey Jim, fantastic last night. Your topic and your appearance on the Artcasters. That was that show was it was like I was taking a cruise, taking a voyage, an adventure. It was exciting and new. Anyhow, it was really great episode. That was anybody gets an opportunity, go to Joshua Circum's. I'm sorry, I put two names together. Joshua Kimball's website or YouTube site, and look up last night's Artcaster video. Edit that out. Let's try that again. Yeah, you get the idea. It was fantastic. I had Gary Hodges and Jim Luan on it talking about media, and does the media and the method have something to do with the project? I think that's a fair, is that an okay way to put it? You know better than I do. You'll correct me in a second, just because it probably needs correction. Okay, so once more. So this is the original page where I drew all the elements on in green color erase pencil. That's me. And then I followed through by putting all the black ink on there with a Fudenosuke pen. These are fantastic pens. People are talking about tools to use. I'm a person who doesn't personally care about tools for the most part, other than the things that I've got I'm going to use, right? But this is the only active pen that I've ever searched for inking, because the brush tips that are on there, there's two. There's a blue and there's a black pen, and one's hard and one's soft, and I couldn't tell you if I remembered which one's which, but they do really great jobs for getting this wonderful variation in your line. And so that's what I used to ink the page, but all of the additional elements were put in the computer. So including so you can see how there's the cats. The cats are laid in over top, and in order to give that ethereal quality to them, I did an extra layer, and I took everything else out except for the cats and converted the line into this deep orange. And then it put another layer underneath that to see that the cats had their own layer I merged the two together so that the cats have their own layer that sits over top of everything else. But you can see where the original cat image is right here in the actual drawing. It allowed me a little bit of play with them too, so that I could adjust their sizes slightly, turn them around, mess with the perspectives on them. And then, of course, I put their text to match in on the page, so that just one more step away from the reality that exists in. So is it in Ricky Salmon's head, or is it is it actually there? Woo-woo. So it's been a double duty week. Of first we had Barney in rehab, and now we've had Richard Simmons. Yeah, that's enough of. I'm at that point where I'm pretty good with doing member berries. Member berries is that thing where we've got look at the size of my ego that my picture is this big on the screen now. Again, this is for one of our viewers that would prefer if they are able to read my lips, and so I got to apologize every time I jump over to the example screen. So, but I'm trying, and my brother-in-law is got vision and hearing problems, and so I truly understand and appreciate and respect everything that everybody goes through that has those, and do my best to help out. So, so the other suggestions that we got on the docket at this point, and today is Friday. I think it's Friday. I believe it's Friday. It's Friday. Look at that. So I've been going through the suggestions that are still kicking up. One is Jim's got a fun one to come up of Rasputin and David Bowie and Joan Crawford shares giant breakfast burrito. I think I'm going to leave that for next week. And the others are the exterior doors hung on the outside of the buildings of storage centers actually go to other worlds. So I'm going to leave that till next week. One of the things that I've got here, though, is a fight over the bridal bouquet. And there's a two-parter. It's a two-part one page, which means 2 pages. But I don't have to do the back-to-back. So I think it's kind of fun to do a little ongoing narrative that appears throughout the story. I think things like that are kind of cool. Yeah. So the fight over the bridal bouquet, part 1 is the catching of the bouquet, and part 2 is the boyfriend's reaction. And I think that this is such an interesting one that maybe we could, I don't know, if people have further suggestions for what next actions would take place, why not throw them in? So yeah, I've got some notes. This is my original note for the Ricky Salmon's page. That's how I break down a page right there. I get it. Anyways, so the fight over the bridal bouquet is the idea. Whether I do this digitally or traditional, I haven't really made any decisions on. I haven't really picked up on what I'm going to draw this in anyways. Now, I wanted to get in a little bit of ballpoint, but the ballpoint pens that I have handy are they stink. They're the kind that, like, I'm looking for. I put aside some Papermate. Papermate pens are quite honestly the best, because Papermate pens, I'll show you something here on this old scrap of what we call papier. So when you're using ballpoints, if you turn a ballpoint, if you have a ballpoint from its top down, you've got your standard lines. If you press heavy, you've got thicker lines. That's how that works. But if you turn a pen on a slight angle, and of course with a change of pressure, you've got the opportunity to all kinds of saucy gray tones, which is great. But the problem with it is that some pens, I wish that I had such a camera that could really pick this up, but some pens, they dollop ink up on the top side because you're putting X amount of pressure on the bottom, but all that ink is coming out equally out of the tip. So it tends to bunch up at the top. So if you accidentally turn your paper over, you get these little hits of ink like this in your lines. And that can stink, especially if you're drawing this very specific ballpoint piece and then there's these smudges of ink throughout. So, there's certain pens that work better than others. I got a question here from Jim. Hi, Jim. What's my favorite writing pen? I don't have one. Whatever I have in my hand, there's a couple of different things I kick around all the time, and that is that's a Blackfoot Inosuke. This is hey, I found a Papermate. All right, well maybe we'll do that. There's just trying to see what different pens I've got. This is a Micron pen. There's your standard ink ballpoint. I'll use Sharpies. I really don't have any preferences. I'm not the guy who spends a ton of money on pens. I spend the most money I'll spend on pens is you get 2 of these Inosuke pens for $10 in Canadian. This guy was $15, but I got a half a dozen cartridges with him. It's a fountain pen. Now I've got 2 different fountain pens, and one's a 03 and one's a. See, here's another pen. One's a 03 and one is a 05. Another one. I got pens coming out my wazoo, as we call it in the old country. So for me, there's no specific. This is the one I use. This is my favorite. See, here's another fountain pen, and again, it's just a difference of the head on that. So for me, it's not. There's no specific thing. This is a thing I love to use. This is a thing I love to work with. It's the tools, in my mind, are far less important than what you're doing with them, and you're going to figure out different things to do with them over time, from having fun and experimenting. Now, I know that Jim has had a challenge with losing his programs that he makes his animation films with. So that's a real thing. That's a real tool. That's a real tool issue, because these are the programs that he uses and so on and so forth. But that's not the same as, I'm going to show you how pretty a Papermate is. I haven't used these guys in a while. So Papermate, look at what the difference of gradation you get out of a Papermate, that you can build up that much light texture. And it's yummy. So, and then the dolloping isn't as bad either. Papermates, way to go when you're drawing with ballpoint pen. So maybe one of the cheapest ballpoint pens. So when it comes to this is also Papermate, but it's just not the same as these old school guys, But this is the modern Papermate. It doesn't work as well. So in that case, in that context, yeah, that's a really real issue, because Jim uses his specific computer programs and does these specific things, and it's a lot of chore to learn all these things, the new programs. And he was expressing this last night on the Artcaster show. That's a legitimate thing about tools. That really is. I think that when it comes to brushes and things like that, you can make brushes work for you. There's all kinds of different kinds of brushes and different types of brushes. This is the only kind of brush that I buy and I use, this is probably going to keep me from ever getting any kind of sponsorship. Not that I know anything about actively looking for one, but I think that when you swear by this pen and this pen as your priority, yeah, who knows? You might keep locking yourself out of the possibility of finding something else that works for you. But when it comes to a computer program that works for you, that's a whole different kettle of fish. So hats off to Jim for getting everything set up with the new system and getting everything rocking again, because I don't know if you've had the opportunity to see his work, but I'm a big fan of Jim Lewan's animations, and I'm always looking forward to seeing what he's doing next. So in that case, him getting all of his tools and stuff put together and for him to get back to doing the thing that makes him have his sense of equilibrium, because really that's what art does for all of us. It's an important part of this. This is going to sound more superficial than I mean it to be. There's such a thing as real. So I have a problem with the term of, is so-and-so a real artist, right? Because that puts a value judgment on people expressing themselves and creating. So I'm not a big fan of that, right? But the closest association I have with whether a person is a real artist or not is the fact that their equilibrium depends on them creating and expressing. And so when you have something that keeps you from doing that, it throws your equilibrium off. And so when you find that set up again, and when you get yourself back into that groove again, everything else falls back into place for you, because you're able to do the thing that's so integral to you. So when it comes to if someone's a real artist or not, I think that there are people that art is their vehicle for self-expression to a great extent. Does that make him a real artist? I don't know if that's still fair, but what it really does do is allows that person to find a sense of balance. So in that sense, it's really important for these people to have either a space to work in, or the facility of things to work with, or the specific tools or programs or whatever it is that they need. And because it's an integral part of how they find their sense of self. You know, artists are artsy types anyways. See, I have a hard time even calling myself artist guy. But artsy types, they go a little squirrely if they're not working. Right? So, yeah. Oh, that's nice of you, Jim. Yeah, I think I'm really happy that you got your setup back together again. And again, like I said before, I'm really excited and looking forward to things coming up. So I have located Mr. Papermate pen. So this is the difference that you can see between the old school Papermate as opposed to new school Papermate. Now, the ink is a far richer black on the new school black Papermate pens. But the old school one gives you the facility to build up those values, right? So this tends to be my weapon of choice. It's a Christopher Walken drop for you, Jim. So yeah, the old Papermate 1.0M. The new one is a 1.0M, but it's called Ink Joy. And I got to tell you, that brings joy to me. So yeah, there's other things that are similar in value. Now this is an 03, right? It says so on the side, 03, which is easy to understand. But they get some really nice lines, really solid blacks, and it lets you do all kinds of, depending on the pressure that you put down with these guys, you get all kinds of different values and different marks. But again, I'm a firm proponent of, in most cases, aside from something like you have to have a specific computer program that works for you in order to do your thing, it's not the tools you buy, it's the way you use them. And it's the person who is using them. I'm far less interested in. I was at an exhibition this year where I was doing some signings for my latest book, One Page Comic Extravaganza Volume 1, available on our website. I didn't even get it in the camera. I blew that. Oh, that would have been so good. Anyways, I was at this show, and it was in a mall, and there's all kinds of vendors and exhibitors there, and all kinds of independent creators that are doing all kinds of different things. Is that what that's called? Papermate Flare Medium Pen. Thank you, Jim. I didn't know the name of my pen. Better write that down, because I gotta get another package of these. Excellent. So anyways, I was at this thing and I was sitting beside people that were talking about watercolors and how they're purists. They're true watercolorists, not like these other people that don't care about their material and they don't care about the quality of the paint that they use. And I'm not to be a jerk. Buckle up. That's the kind of sentence that leads me into being a jerk. Not to be a jerk, but their paintings of their watercolor paintings of birds and flowers were no different than the person that they were deriding, and it was on the opposite side of me. Her paintings of birds and watercolors. It was just a perfect sandwich of watercolors on either side and a lunatic in between. So there really wasn't much difference. I don't care what quality of paints this person has bought and their mediums and their whatever it is. It doesn't matter in that context. And so making some big argument about it has to be this way is disingenuous, and largely disingenuous to themselves. So, yeah. Okay, this is my little pad of doodly-doo, and I keep some stuff ready to rock on with my weird alterations to it, just because, you know, in the words of some wise sage from the ancient times, Christopher's an odd duck. Okay, so the idea is, I've lost my notes. Yeah, the idea is with this page, it is Fight Over the Bridal Bouquet. So now I'm excited. This is going to be a 2-page thing. And so it's going to come out. I'll post both pages at once on Monday. But I get the weekend to do a 2-page piece. I also have an exciting thing planned for my post on Sunday. It's an advertisement, a little bit of Canadian content. Can I reach it? Hold on. I've been thinking more and more that I need more Canadian content for this thing we call shoe. And so I've got an ad that's been put together starring Bob and Doug. Okay, yeah, put it here. What am I doing? I've got an ad coming in on Sunday that has Bob and Doug in it, and just for taking a look at Chris's thing there, eh? There we go. This is I can't contend with how big my head is here. Yeah, we'll get that sorted out. Hey, I'm still there. So, yeah, I'm going to keep in frame to the best of my ability so that people can see the big old noggin if they need to read my lips. Read my lips. No more nukes. And, but I can't have my head that big. It weirds me out. So, yeah, here's Bob and Doug and Beauty, eh? So there's an advertisement that's coming out on Sunday starring these two cats. Yeah. So the Richard Simmons page goes into the pile. I'm going to set up a sound effect so that every time I throw something in the pile, it smashes. I love doing stuff like that. You know. But I love that when, hey, how you doing there, Gary? You're fantastic on the show last night, Gary. It's really, really insightful. Yeah, I think I want to set that up where I, whenever I throw something, because I tend to throw things in my studio a lot. If a pencil's not sharpening for me, I throw it behind me, pick it up later, and throw it in the garbage. Just because if there's few things that drive me crazier, it's air, the wind, soups. No, it's pencils that don't sharpen. Whenever here's Dad's over-explanativeness 101. When kids tap or when adults tap their pencil like this, it breaks the lead in the pencil. And that's a weird pet peeve of mine. And it's probably from X amount of pencils I've sharpened through the course of my life. Yeah. So the problem when you buy singles, or as I like to call them, Lucy's, at an art supply store, because you got to, you're using the one color a little too much, is that when you buy those singles, you don't know that you're going to go home and drive yourself absolutely insane because that lead's broken in 15 places from some kid trying to test it out and then tapping it on the counter. Yeah. All right. So So, anyways, yeah, I really enjoyed the show last night. I really enjoyed the topic. I really enjoyed the opportunity to hear the gentleman's take on choice of medium in order to do a project. It was really interesting to me. And thanks very much for doing that, guys. It was great. 2 enthusiastic thumbs up. By the way, Chris, your pin might be a different pet, and then the Papermate flare. Not sure. I get what you're saying. It's Siri. I get it. My pen might be a different one than the Papermate flare. I'll look into it. That's but I just look for one that's shaped like this when I go to the department store or regular place that sells normal pens. And I've heard people say that there's certain kinds of high-end ballpoint pens that are far better for doing professional ballpoint pen drawings. And their light fastness is so much stronger. And to those people, I say, you pay for them. So this thing does a great job. And Gary and Jim, it's got 2 little hearts on it. And that's not half bad. So, okay, where was I? So the idea with the let's get a big piece of paper. I think that works when I block it all out this way. That's plotting and blocking, Corbin, both at once. Corbin was very excited, by the way, to be a starring part of the Richard Simmons page, or as I call him, Randy Sammons. He was very excited about that. It was very, very, very interesting to him. Now, like the Ricky Sammons page, this is my breakdown for that page, and then trying to explain to myself what some of my small notes mean. What does it say here? Regarding last night's topic, I kind of feel like you would survive any materials change or hardship. You're really good at thinking on the fly. Thank you. Yeah, for me, the difference of working from one medium to another is poverty. When I was a kid, we had nothing. And single mom system, right? And, Canadian, Western rural complaints are far less valid than people in other parts of the world who have real poverty. But growing up in a place with all the haves around you, because I grew up in a place where people that I knew were far, 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 far wealthier than my family was. And, they get all the toys and beeps and whistles. And I'm scrambling and going to places that, like, inexpensive bargain basement stores, things that are like dollar stores or thrift shops and stuff like that. And that's where I would get whatever I had to work on. So typewriter paper got me a long way in life. And then you find a facility in that. You'll find a facility to work with different things. And not pass up on the opportunity to use anything. Somebody says, here's this cast-off thing. And you go, oh, that's awesome. Because that cast-off thing to them is that fantastic thing that you have always wanted to have. So I appreciate that, Jim. That's very nice of you. Okay, so this is my rough notes for the fight over the bridal bouquet. And my intention for the first page is to be entitled, It's Meant to Be. So maybe It's Meant to Be will be the title throughout. So this is an old one-page suggestion. I'm trying to catch up on a bunch of them that I got a few in before I started posting A Village Haunted and some of the stream pages. Unfortunately, I lost my list that had names on it. And I had another list where I just jotted a few of them down. So so I feel like a jerk. But the idea of part 1, right, is the catching of the bouquet, and then bouquet. So, Jim, I think that your facility for drawing, notwithstanding using a computer, is fantastic. And when I heard that you don't draw in sketchbooks at all, for a moment last night, I went, oh. And then you went, well, not for these. I went, ah, it's really, really pathetic. Because I've seen some of your sketch work and your idea generation, and that's on point. Can't lose that. Okay, so the idea is I want to have some kick. I want to do a punch up. I want to have the grab, scream in the face, and then the punchline, the punchline over the victim. I went punchline. What this punchline? I thought I was thinking of they're going to punch a line as opposed to a punchline. Can't even read my own notes, folks. So this is over the victim that they dropped the line. So this is, again, one of those things I want to try where the title isn't. The problem with when you're drawing pages and you've got, when you're doing a page and you have a standard scale or standard format for your approach, and because they're one pages, or because this applies to whenever you're doing any books or any stories or anything else, anything at all. Look at Will Eisner. Okay, I highly recommend people, if you have an opportunity, well, you might not like his subject matter, maybe it's not your bag, or you might not like his style specifically per se. I always thought Will Eisner had absolutely brilliant things to say about going about and making. Here we are. I got 2 copies of this because I'm a weirdo. I got my old school hardcover from years and years and years ago, and I got a second edition that I bought on sale at the shop I worked at because, I get tired of things disappearing. So, okay. So Will Eisner, when you look at his work, and he talks about title pages, like here's the title page for Will Eisner. There's an opening line page, and an opening line page or a presentation page or a splash page or a title page or whatever you want to call it. It's important to think about how can we incorporate interesting elements into that page, and to have this title page be different than the one before it, or the one before that. Your consistency is something Gary was speaking to last night. Your consistency in your approach to working, and your consistency, the rules that you set for yourself when it comes to executing your projects, that's there. That's the through line. That's the thing that consistently goes from book to book to book. But it doesn't mean you can't have experimentation and variation within, and using your rules, right? So that you can approach a different way of embedding titling into, like if you've got the shadow of a car, and in the shadow of the car, so as the characters get out of the car to walk up to the next scene that's taking place, as they step over this, so they get out of the car, steps down on the ground, and then the next panel is a distant shot of them walking towards X. But when you see that side of the car in the shadow below it, that's where you can hide the title of the story in. That'd be a Will Eisner move. So when Will does his opening credit stuff, now let's see if I can find any more. Here's another one. There's Spirit 2 Lives. So he's specifically broken down this page, this piece, that there's one narrative on this side and an alternate narrative on this side. And so he's started it by 2 lives. There's the start of this one. There's the start of that one. This is actually continuing text, but then it breaks through for the entire piece. But he does so in the very presentation of the title page. He shows to you that there's a separation of the 2. See, here's another one. The Amulet of Osiris, the Spirit, and the arrow points down. Now, this is a conversation that follows down to this. But the point is it's different approaches in order to try to enhance the interest for the viewer in the piece. Here's foul play. Foul play, small type at the top, get right into it. Right? So I think Will Eisner is probably, here's a postcard. That's how this one opens. Right? Starts with a postcard. Every page has an additional postcard as we're following the journey of this sidekick character for Will Eisner. Or for the Spirit, I'm sorry. But the point of it is that it's constantly giving us different ways of looking at each piece of narrative that we're doing. So one of the things I'm trying to do with the one pages is to try to distinctly separate the way that text is presented, how I put text inside of an image, or make it as part of an image. So, I mean, in yesterday's, I'm going to jump again to the computer screen. So the Ricky Salmon show, I did it as a show title at the top here. Now there's a lot of continuation, like there's a lot of similarity between the last 2 days' pages, because the Barney page that's before, I did it like it was a title card for a different kind of show, like a sort of documentary show about where are they now. And in this one being a workout show, it's sort of presented like those drop-down letters hanging above the guests on a talk show type thing. And despite the similarity of the 2 pages, I tried to exhibit a different way of presenting the title into the narrative. So that, that's something that I'm always considering. So on this page for this layout, because I've got these key elements that I want to have happen through the course of it, having the punchline at the end gives me the affordance of all of these things happening without explanation of why these things are happening. And in this context, it's one female guest at a wedding kicking the holy baloney out of a whole bunch of the other female guests that are at the wedding, who've also tried to catch the bouquet that was thrown by the bride. And at the end, as she's standing over top of the woman that caught it, after she's weighed her way through all the women that were in the way, she says to her as she's standing over top, "I need this. It's meant to be." It's just mental. It's a mental idea. But I can put, it's just meant to be, in larger letters in this bottom piece of the page, right? And so it's almost like in the context of this one-page comic, it's all preamble before the credit comes up. I really like in films and television shows when you see text embedded in scenes, text embedded in shots, or when you've got a little bit of scene happening at the beginning of it, and then the character walks by the brick wall that has the title of the story spray painted on the wall. Things like that are really compelling to me, and I love the active participation it causes me as a viewer to have to look for that. Or when you have the credits of the actors or the directors and so on and so forth, somehow embedded in the city skyline. So it looks like, this is a natural part of the signage of the street, or these tall letters that just sit on top of buildings. There's no necessity of explanation, but it does give a vibe, an energy to the project. So with all of that, so laying out this page to have various characters doing various things, and in this, like I said, in this context of the principal kicking the holy baloney out of the other characters that are in the scene. So my thought is to take that and to start with that. To start with, here we go with so this is our principal, and I'm just going to go really loose here. So if our principal is got the hand up, raised fist, okay, I would probably lift her up into the corner farther, but the notion is that she has raised the leg and done the boot to the first of the guests, right? And then, of course, figuring out the anatomy is one thing, but then you've got to go back with that and take those structural ideas that you have for your image. And then I get to put them all in bridal gowns, right? Well, not a bridal gown specifically, not a bride's dress, but bridesmaids outfits or nice dresses worn to a wedding. And so I like the idea of that. I think that something like that is really fun because it sort of establishes there's an expectation of the fighting and the violence, but then there's a turn on its ear when you realize everybody's dressed really nicely. and they're doing all these bits and bobs in ways that don't make any sense. This is really no way to behave. So by setting all of this up and all of this action up, what I want to do is to have a bit of a fly through on the scene. So if I've got, so if I put the second person, the reaction to the hit, all right, so if I put her hand here and I'll twist her body in such a way as to bear the hit, right? So there's our principles. This is just who she's hitting right now. And as I've got this one here, and I want it to be, I hate when you see the differentiation between male and female characters, like the female characters can't be as physically aggressive as the male characters in projects. It just makes me, it baffles me. So I need another character back here that this raised fist has probably already connected with this one. And so this one's falling back here. We'll have the legs going out from underneath her as she's, this one's giving her the haymaker. And so now we've got this dynamic between these two, and let's tilt this head farther back so that that that's contact, right? Because this head up here is like, oh, this is artificial being hit, but when somebody's head has to go back like that, there's contact. So there's our principal image, right? And like I say, I'd move that up. I'd give a good fifth of the page space at the bottom for this. So with that in mind, as we move into, so there's our first. So as we move into this punch, this physical swing here that comes next, what I'd like to see is for that character's follow through into the next panel. So it's a lot of physical action. That engagement of physical form. Okay, now here's this is my theory. All right, I don't know if this is an absolute truth to other people, but for me, when you have characters in a static, when you've got characters in a bunch of animated, I was supposed to check out, and I got 3 in and went, I do not want to watch these. Okay, let's get rid of that stupidness. Oh, the Dead Leaves is really funny. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm missing stuff regarding last night. Oh, that was very nice. Yeah. What I'm doing here would make a great TV show, drawing suggestions from the audience emails. But yes, you would have to call it Art Prof by law. Thanks, Jim. By law. I need a producer for Art Prof. But yeah, that would be fun. Remember when things like that used to go on public access television? Do you remember public access television? And how whenever it was somebody that had, like, let's say a guy named Bob would go on and have some joy while he was painting. The biggest thing about democratization of the internet, and that having everybody in their armpit out here doing their own, here's how to draw, 5 fast tips on becoming the greatest penciler. Let me show you with my pen here. So the more and more of that we have, the less and less, the more and more difficult it becomes, I guess. The more and more we have of these people doing this, the more and more difficult it becomes to find the people that you can make sense of what they're talking about. I tend to yammer. I don't know if people can make sense of what I'm talking about, but I appreciate that idea. But I'm probably not the polished enough guy to do it. What was I talking about? Okay, so action, contained action, and I'm going to do this later. Open face action. So contained action, a person in the panel who's doing their kick, okay, and they got their leg up, and the other person's getting their response. And I figured this out from drawing X amount of books, is that there's that energy, okay, and it's kind of contained, all right, from the note. Now, and then the second approach to it, by having the individuals jump outside of that panel, okay, and having the second person's physical response moving outside that panel opens up the energy of it more. And when you line that panel in behind and they're busting outside of the conformed, the conformed space, the confined area, there's more energy in the second, right? I'll do this, look, 2. There's more energy in that one than there is in the first one. Now, maybe that's just me, but that's what it feels like. So that when you've got Spider-Man swinging on a web and you see somebody drawing, the wall crawler, and here he is with his thing, and he's got his one leg up in the air and the other leg like this, because that's comfortable. So as he's swinging on the string, if you put that into a panel like this, okay, right? You've confined the space, so you just look at it as there he is swinging on the swing, or on the web. But when you put the panel here on the structure of the page, so that his leg is kicking out here, his other leg is kicking out there, the web moves across it. Okay, now there's a larger sense of dynamic movement, right? And in a page where I don't do an awful lot of action pages when I'm doing these one-page comic jams, because the suggestions haven't offered those ideas. Now I'm keen for it. Corbin, I'm in here. You can hear Corbin wandering around lost because Lori just left to do some errands. Just get in a share. So I have to tap his seat so he'll sit down. It's ridiculous. So, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so I don't do an awful lot of action pages just because the ideas haven't been there. I mean, what the Richard Simmons dealing with the Cheshire Cat, unless I have Richard Simmons kick the holy baloney out of the Cheshire Cat, there's really not enough, not a lot of offerings for action in that, right? I'm missing stuff again. But when I do get to do it, I really like to go all out. Jim says that I had a show on public access television in LA for a couple of years. That is awesome. That is awesome news. Jim Luan's animatic cartoon show. See, I say animatics all the time. I'm really happy to hear somebody else say that, unless that's Siri messing with me. That's brilliant. Is there copies of that anywhere? Is there a way that, are those on your YouTube station? Is there a way for people to see those? Because I think you'd be brilliant at it. Dee, we still have 2 PBS channels here in Atlanta. However, the art shows like Bob Ross and Jerry Arnell are one technique type shows. If one likes ideas, then we go to shows like mine or Artcasters. Mine? What are you doing? Get out of here. Well, that's very nice of you, Dee. That same applies to you, Dee. People go to you for all these ideas as well. Dee says, hi, everybody. Well, that's very nice. I don't know that there is... I don't have a lot of spit and polish on this project, on this series of things that I'm doing here. So I don't know how marketable all of this jazz is, but if I can help people out by figuring out some of these things with them, I'm all about that. And that's my starting point. That's my starting place for how I'm going to get on with getting some things done. I've really got to get it figured out. In fact, I've got it figured out for this weekend that as if I can collect addresses from a bunch of people, I'm going to start mailing them stuff just Priscus. So I'm going to need to get people like Dee and Jim and Gary. Okay, get your addresses from you and fill up, and so I can start mailing out some things. I have a package I have to send to Frank in Far, Texas. That's not close. Waiting for that joke. You know that? I've been waiting for a far joke. A long time ago in a galaxy near Frank. Far away. I came up with that joke. Okay, so back to this. So if the idea here is to have this dramatic action and this dramatic tension in these characters fighting, that's where, and on top of this principle, okay, so on top of this framing principle, if you want to push this even farther, and you have, again, these same characters, and I'm sorry if I'm drawing this too small. I try to hold it up afterwards, but I'm trying to, I use every scrap of whatever I find. So this is a piece of paper I have in the moment. Okay, so if this is this character, and then this is this character's reaction, you notice I keep getting more dimension to them as I go. That's weird. So if this character's reaction is out here, and it's breaking outside this panel, now establishing that you put the smaller box in the reduced line behind the action so that it looks like it's bursting out. If you want to take that even farther, then play with shapes, play with forms, right? Look at taking squares and adjusting their shape and warping them so that, and to follow in some sense, that's great, Dee. We call it Happy Mail. I like Happy Mail. I never get any Happy Mail, but I like Happy Mail. So by pushing the boundaries of that environment that they're in now and warping it out. So if we take these same lines that are still behind these characters, because we want to half behind the action roots them into an environment that they're bursting out of, right? So if we keep that, but now we have completely disrupted the shape of that panel from its norm, right? And the norm, when I say that, the expectation of norm is what I'm referring to. When people look at comic books or sequential stories, they're looking for boxed frames of reference. It's a natural tendency because of how publications have put those together for the last so many hundreds of years, right? There's an expectation of that, even when you'd have illustrations like some of the... Okay, so Picasso did a comic book for Guernica. I don't know that enough people know this. Picasso did a comic book for Guernica. His 16-foot-long painting that he did talking about the bombing of a village, which is a horrible, horrible topic. And he tried to example all the horrible aspects of that topic. But what he did was break down a cartoon and of a number of cartooned images, a number of sequential images in order to try to show the different facets of information that he wanted to get into that painting, like the horses on fire running in panic, the bombs themselves actually dropping down, the people scattering around in panic, trying to, crashing into each other, the overturning of materials in the streets, the sheer collapse into fear. So there's a beautiful example of this, and I have to look this up. I'll try to find, I have a copy of it. I'll try to find that to show in a future stream here, but look it up if you can. Picasso's cartoons of Guernica. So, but in those, there's two approaches that were taken in the day. The reason I bring this up is you can draw it in the box and you have the information here, okay? And there's my rough information just to show you in a frame of reference. But then at the same time, having the same information without that frame of reference gives it a different sense of locality, right? When you put a frame of reference onto an image, oftentimes that frame of reference closes the image in. So depending on the location of the character in a panel, let's say you have somebody's face and it's very lit out and you've got them looking, down a hallway, and because of the bad lighting, that you see the individual is largely cast out into the darkness around them. When you fill that space around them with black, but you have an open-ended panel, then the sense of locality isn't confining enough for us to feel a sense of dread or the imposition of heightened fear in the environment that they're in. So when you put that framing structure around them, now they're enclosed. So there's all kinds of psychology inside of this. There's probably a great deal of this explained in Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. I'm going to expose something right here. I never read Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. I found it incredibly boring. And this may be the ridiculous thing, that I'm boring when I'm telling you about this stuff. But the problem with reading something like this just on the page in its structured sense, it's not the same thing as trying to walk through the process and the steps. When you just have square panel example, this exhibited example here, this exhibited example there, it doesn't do it for you, right? I don't know what the heck I was writing down there. Something. Oh yeah, it's Joshua Campbell's channel. That Mark Cash was on last night. That's what that note is. So it doesn't do the same thing for you when you're flipping through a book and you see just this example, and then this is this kind of thing, and this is this kind of thing. It's a different. Maybe it's just my learning processes, or maybe it's just too much exposure to things. And sometimes when you read so much information on the process of something, it dispels the magic of it. But I've owned a copy of Understanding Comics. I can't read it. I just, I can't read it. Hey, Philip Chandler's joined us. How you doing, Philip? Bing bong. So, but if some of these things I'm sure are in it, there's no doubt in my head that these things are in it or not. But for me, reading Will Eisner's Comics and Sequential Art and these different iterations that I have it, he defined a lot of these rules. He created an awful lot of these things. And there's a lot of these things that are being pushed aside now. Like, I find it interesting that Scott doesn't have any narrative boxes in The Young and Dead. That's part of the rule set that he established for himself for the production of that series. I think narrative boxes are fun. I really do. It allows you to have an interplay of voices. It allows you to have the interaction of the characters, and allows you to further the contextual narrative with narrative boxes. Or to be able to say On a Sunny Street is you've drawn a sunny street, yes you have, but if you write On a Typical Street in your image of a sunny street, there you go, right? There you go. I mean, there's the differentiation between the two. This is a typical street. This is an ordinary street. They just want to add that extension onto that contextualization of here's your street. We look at that and we associate it because we're in the Western world. We've drawn a Western street, or a typical urban street. Okay. But when you write that it's a typical ordinary street, this allocates it from specificity. This could take place anywhere. And that is opening to the reader, because that means it could take place downtown in the place they're in. Or it could take place in a large city that they've never been to, so they don't have to worry too much about this, the absolute correctness of the location of everything in relation to reality. So there's something to that. What am I missing here? Ooh, nice book. Yeah, I love this book. I really do. This is why I own two. This is the original right here, and I bought this, I think, probably 30 years ago, and it was a prized treasure. It's a prized thing to me, right? So then when we had a sale copy at the store from somebody's collection come in, I bought this one so that I would be able to just hold on to one of my favorite books, and no longer, do things like spilling things on the cover and having it stand it permanently years ago. Sadness. Now, Dee Dee says that she bought it because of the history, and Marsh talked about that. Are we talking about Understanding Comics, or are we talking about Comics and Sequential Art by Will Eisner? It's because both of them have their historical content. There's all kinds of. I have a shelf up behind me. That's it, right? And these shelves are full of the making of books. And so there's all kinds of really fun stuff in here. But some of the better ones is Vanguard's watch annual, which, let's see if I could allocate that. Locate that, I guess is the word I'm looking for. See, there's things like the Comics Guide to Creating Comics, Carl Potts. There's the inking with Klaus Janson. There's writing with Peter David. There's all kinds of these types of things. Robotech, Cerebus's Guide to Self-Publishing. Some of these things no longer matter. Here's Understanding Comics, by Scott McCloud. And again, I haven't read the thing. Gary Martin's comic book inking is fantastic. I actually appreciated that more than Klaus Janson's. But this is another good one. This is, if you get a chance to find this, please look for this if you're interested in doing comic books. This book is fun because of who's in it. So, McCloud. You're talking about McCloud's book. Yeah. Have you read it, Dee Dee? Have you read Scott McCloud's book? So this is interviews, actual interviews, talking about design and sequential art storytelling. So this is interviewing actual creators, and you've got Carlin Stradley, Mike Waringo is no longer with us, Schultz, Giordano, Dick Giordano, Neil Adams' studio partner. That studio was those two guys together for years and years and years. But he was also one of the best inkers at DC. And proliferant. That man inked a lot of books people don't realize. Magnola, Stelfreeze, Scott Hampton. There's two Hamptons, Scott and Bo. Both of them are brilliant. Mazzucchelli, that's year one for Batman. Moeller, fantastic painters. Walt Simonson, you'll know from Thor. George Pratt, Enemy Ace. John Van Fleet, he did The Chalice and a bunch of the painted books for DC. Chiarella was the art director for DC for a long time, and he also did some fantastic books for Epic. He did Gotham by Gaslight. That's his painted book. And then Will Eisner, right? So it interviews a lot of these guys on their different approach to process. Okay, and then how they look at value, like color value on a page, and break that down, or how we look at, the way we go about utilizing tools around us, like photocopying images and then destabilizing those and then inking over top of those. There's things like that. There's George Pratt's brushwork, really fluid, open brush, fantastic, right? Absolute brilliant painter. But here's his approach to comic books and the crashing through of an image from panel to panel. See that movement suggested by the planes moving across the wingspan, moving across three different panels. So there's a whole. Here's Simonson and how he really incorporates text into the visual elements of his page. So there's a whole bunch of different creators, and they have a whole bunch of little different noodles that they introduce. See, that's one of the Hamptons. The Upturned Stone is one of the scariest comics ever made. It's about I got to meet him. Super cool guy. Upturned Stone is a fantastic thing about kids in a pumpkin patch. But it's a weird book to have signed when you meet an artist. But for me, that meant a lot more than just having him sign a comic. Magnola, how he breaks down a page and how the different size of panels mean something. It's just, there's so much that we can learn about our storytelling approaches. And it's not just a case of a right way and a wrong way to do it. There are so many different approaches here of how people work out their ideas. And he even cites a number of examples of people that aren't in this book. And so I really appreciate this. There's Captain Contradiction, and it's just two tiny little guys fighting on a panel. Fighting on a page of panels, right? And at the same time, it's far better to just hug. Make love, not war. But books like this are absolute resources in your journey, your exploration into how for you to go about telling your unique story in your own unique way. So I picked up things from all of these. You glean something out of each one. What? Sit on your chair. Needy. I have a needy cat. I put him in a comic page yesterday, and he's still harassing me. All right. So with that in mind, here, just sit here. Look. All right. There you go. You wave at the camera. I'll do the talk. Deal? Covered in hair. Okay. So, Corbin. An idiot animal. Okay. So the idea here is that the first panel is going to start the action. And then if we transition the shape and space across with the background of this panel, okay, and move it crashing into the next, right? It allows us a break so that we can use a break period with this panel jumping over top of that one. It makes the viewer's eye follow across, but at the same time, he is as happy as he's ever been up on top of my desk while we're doing this. I have a ring light. My cat just went and put his hand through the ring light like it was the most remarkable thing. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so in the next panel, I want to have a punch. So I'm going to have our character lean into it. And because I've got this break of a panel shape here, but the first panel crashing into it in its strange contorted shape, it lets me play with the shape of the image so that I can have a close-off point. And I want a close-off point on my panel. I don't want everything to bleed over into everything else, because when you do this, and then this goes over top the lower panel, as soon as you got this foot cutting into the lower panel, the viewer's eye goes that way. We don't want to do that. So, do we, Corbin? Okay. All right. Now you're out of control. He's trying to eat the camera. All right. Find your spot. He's a huge cat, by the way. That's why it's not just me. He's a big cat. So we want to cut it at the bottom here, right? So as we've got this person giving an old haymaker to the next individual, we can push this element a little farther. We've got this person whose back of their head is here. This is their spine. This is the bottom, right? As they're basically falling back towards the viewer in this first panel. So when she cracks this next one in the face, it's the opposite angle, so that this one is flying backwards from her, right? So there's the nose, there's the eyes. And by having that action happening here, we can even further this and further the expediency of the moment by having her arm here from the first girl knocked out. We can have her arm in her hand as she hasn't hit the ground yet, right? In that panel. So if we do this, if we warp the panel shape again, okay, now this shape of the panel will tell the viewer a couple things. If we put the angle all the way down to the bottom, it's almost like it's an arrow pointing this way. But if we break the panel like this, that arrow is pointing this way. So now that we're controlling again how the viewer looks at the action and how it overlaps one into the next. And it allows us to differentiate one moment to the next one. But we don't want a big gap in between and another block line. So we've got the kick, the punch, the grab. So what I would do here is really close up on this character and have her reach up, pardon me, I got the hiccups, and have her reach ahead and grab this next character in her hands and grabbing her by her dress and pulling her dress and just ruining her pretty dress. as she's pulled forward. And, you know, you can even try, if you want to give a little heightened sense of engagement, think about ways that we can make those arms and hands move around in order to facilitate a little more storytelling. Having everybody go on each panel, like this whole open flat palm thing, isn't going to work in this context, right? If you have her hand just up like this, well, we've already got reaction shots of people's arms flailing about as they're kicked or punched. But when this girl's grabbed her close, it gives a sense of immediacy between the two, a closure between the two, that the second girl who's being grabbed can raise her elbow up and take her, the person who's got a grip on her, now she's touching her elbow, like grabbing a hold of her elbow as though she was going to try to pull her arm off her. So, and then we have that character falling back. Now that we've established this identifiable engagement or action between these two characters, okay, we want to figure out the facility of the panel itself. I would push it at a slightly tilted angle and not have it straight up and down in order to get it back into some of this energetic direction, even though it's a largely static image. And as her other arm is bent behind her body here, well, that's a great opportunity for that break to be utilized for this elbow to pop out of that space a little bit. And so as the panel cuts in this way, and then we drop their bodies below this panel line, we've pushed that sense of shape and movement again and trying to keep it interesting. I had a talk one time with Howard Chaykin, and Howard Chaykin showed me that in his thought, in his opinion, every comic should be nothing but this basic pattern. And what he means by this basic pattern is, and you need to have characters moving on this side that way. You can have one person say something, okay, facing this way to the other character, and then you can have the second character say something facing back towards our first. You could even contextualize the two of them as standing side by side or directly across from each other in the third panel. But that final panel, whatever it is, the action still has to move this way. And the characters have to stay on their own individual sides. That's the breakdown of panels, according to Howard Chaykin. Now, if you look at early Howard Chaykin's books, he really pushes that. He really pushes that so far, and there's all this energy and vitality of it. And then when you look at his stuff that he's done the last few years, well, he's got it down to a formula. There's a reason that most people go, oh, I remember Howard Chaykin's stuff when he did this thing or when he did that thing, as opposed to, have you read Howard Chaykin's latest book? Because formula takes the vitality and energy out of things. I love and respect Howard Chaykin's work. I do. The man himself, he's interesting. But I love and respect his work. And yet at the same time, I'm far more engaged and enthusiastic towards his earlier work. And it's a lot to do with the fact that he pushes and experiments with the boundaries of the images, and he pushes and he experiments with the flow and direction of movement. Whether it's the characters, whether it's the engagement in the story and the dialogue or things like that, because it adds so much more to it, right? So, okay, back to this. Now, our next key point that we want to get in is this irrational scream. This is the next thing I've written down, right? So we've gone 1, 2, 3, and I put scream. Now, I allocated space down here for the scream. So if I'm going to break this page up in this way and leave this as the exterior line, if I cut a line down here, right, then I would move the scream down to there, right? And that's still a possibility. But I think that pushing that a little bit farther is going to be some more fun. And so arguably, because we've already got this face looking at this face, if we have the irrational look, okay, I'm drawing as basically as I can. If we've got the irrational, like crazy face, you know, she's just screaming. It's guttural. It's no There is no refinement here to this character, because this isn't indicative or representative or representing of all women or anything like that. This isn't just bringing her down into a stereotype. There are irrational people in this world. It's an absolute given. And as storytellers, it's a fun thing to play up on the irrationality, right? So if we have a character who is a little bit left of center, let's say, whose cheese has slid a bit off its cracker, right? If we've got those characters in our stories, let's capitalize on that, right? That's the whole thing about storytelling, and its nuance is that you really want to push things a little bit farther. Why not, right? All this talking's making me thirsty. So, if we've got crazy lady who's screaming into the camera, this is where we play with, because we've had open panels where we've got the action jumping outside of the frame of reference. The frame of reference is rooted in behind, okay? At this point, there's two approaches we can have to this. We can have her head here and the panel barely existing in and around side her head. The panel existing at all is to try to give some sort of continuance of this panel-to-panel narrative, right? But you can also have just her head going, blah. I find that it tends to stick out too much. It tends to separate that image almost like it's a reliquary thing. It sort of separates it and differentiates it so much that it stops having the flow of the page, and it starts having too much importance or too much impact to it. Because why is that random head floating in the air? It works in a lot of cases. There's some really good examples of how you can go about doing that. I would suggest Stuart Immonen would be one, for he has a facility for having just a head and shoulders shot sitting there without any contextual background to it at all, as Spider-Man's going, yeah, maybe, right? Or Peter Parker. But in this case, we really want to play up on she's just screaming for screaming's sake, right? So there's two ways we can do that. We've got the rough shape of the head. Now, if you sit down and you try to do this, where she's popping out of it, right? Whatever shape that you're going to use, remember that your corners are directional lines. So you want to stay away from too much directional lines. Like, in order to take out the confusion, yeah, see, I got to go buy some more of these because these are dead. But I'm trying to eliminate that. Yeah, completely dead. Now Corbin's going after because he wants to know what the noise is. So I'm just trying to show you that this panel is here. We chose to go across here and not have the foot coming sticking out of the panel, because that's a directional line that the eye follows. So, and by making the shape of this panel go like this, pushes the viewer this way instead of following this line down and out of the panel. If we ran the corner all the way down like this on this diagonal axis, then again, the viewer's eye would go outside of the panel, right? So we're going this way now. So then we've got this tilted line, still falls in behind the body, and the body line pushes us this way, keeps us inside the panel. Then we've got the two characters following. This elbow is taking us to the next shape, the next panel, the next allocation of space. So when this crazy face, right, if we have her crazy here, punch across this panel too, whatever the hair is, right? If we move it outside the shape, but we still have some kind of context of a panel shape in behind it, it's rooted enough that it continues this structural narrative. And we can get a little more creative by dropping this panel down a little bit and then dropping that panel down a little bit as well. Dropping it, let's say, 1/4 inch, okay? And so that your panels now line up like so. I'm just going to use squares because just to get the gist of it for people. Okay, so now your panels line up like so. But what that is, even though we've got these jagged and kooky lines for our panels, you're containing the flow. So now our page will have gone up and started to arc back down. But because of this little dangling participle, This moves Pascas. Pascas 1. Yes, Didi, I know. Yes, I will buy some. I've got it written down. I've got a photo of them that you sent me. I'm going to order some Pascas. I just have to sit down on the interwebs and do that. I'm really cheap. So in some sense, you should pick up this. And I'm like, yes, I should. I'm going to get some of those next time I get some of this. But then I don't run out and do it because there's this part of me that's like, I wonder if there's more inexpensive but the same quality ones of those that I could find locally. That's just who I am. It's an imbalance, sure, but it's a whole grassroots local thing. But yeah, I can't find anything other than Pascas on that quality level, so I'm gonna have to sit down and order some. And thank you again for that suggestion. I'm referring to if anybody can't see it there. Thank you again, Didi. Okay, so now this line of action moves us this way. She's got her irrational scream. It carries over from this face that she has here, right? And we've just enhanced it even more. And the text allows us to have her just guttural sound come out. And it can even follow this axis right here. Just whatever comes out of her head. Okay? And then the final panel, which in this case, we can expedite to a final panel here. Or we can cut back. Now, this is the point. This is the arguable point. You know, we can have the other character that's being attacked who is holding the bouquet, okay? This is the one that has the bouquet. So let's just put that here. Sorry, I should have put that element in. Okay, so when she's screaming in her face because beating up these other people was just to get to this lady here. And she says, give me it, or whatever her crazy expression is. And the fun thing about onomatopoeia is that whatever words that you're going to use are going to exemplify the sound, and don't be concerned about the way the spelling looks so weird or the what an odd sound to make. That doesn't matter. You're just trying to get across the sense, the audio, the audible sense of what this person is doing in the context of your story. And if you have to use words as pictures to do that, the onomatopoeia, then do it. Oh my God, I hate you so much. And it doesn't mean, oh my God, I hate you so much. It's, oh my God, I hate you so much. And kick out the values or whatever. So if a person reads it phonetically, it reads like, oh my God, I hate you so much. Put an 8 in there when you're writing hate. Who cares? It's your book. Do what you want to do. Make it your thing. There's a really important point that Gary made last night in the Artcasters broadcast. Everybody should check it out. Go to Joshua Kimball on YouTube. He made a really good point about a structured rule set when you're doing your pieces. This is a fresh piece, so I have no rule set for this. So I can do whatever crazy notion comes across my brain right now. This is kind of one of the reasons that I like doing one pages in the afternoon. You know, I got the structured stuff I got to do in the morning. And it's structured stuff according to a rule set. But in the this time that we have for these streams, and a little bit of time I have at night to finish it up, this is where the gloves are off, and I'm just going bonkers, right? So, oh God, I hate you so much. And the hate it has the number in there because people will read it like a license plate. That's what people do. They try to make sense of the jibber jabber around them. So we can, as it cuts back down here, what have I done? Oh, okay. So it cuts back down to here. Now we read left to right. So if you, oh my God, I hate you so much, you'll still go back along the word. People argue about this. I think you still go, oh my God, I hate you so much, comes out of her mouth, but you're still going to jump to this panel. You're just going to. It's the way we read, sequential literature. It's the way we read in the West. In the East, you got to flip-flop this entire page, right? So it brings us to this panel. where we can have this young lady, and you can try to have some degree of stability to this panel. Let's just tilt it on its side, though, because we still want to have some degree of, it's an irrational thing all around, right? So tilt the panel, but have a structured, regular shape, rectangular panel here. That's, at least that's my choice for this, right? But I'm still going to tilt it a little bit. And the reason for that is that everything's off center here. And we can have the girl here with the flowers, and the entire enhanced image here is the flowers. And the girl here says, please, just take them. Right? You can even have her say, give me the flowers, whatever it is, right? And then at this point, there's two options we have here. It's either a continuance of the action, but honestly, in my opinion, for this page, as I'm drawing it, I want a closure to the action. And a closure to the action means everybody is lying here on the floor, okay, and they're completely knocked out and beat up and trying to figure out what just happened, all right? And so there's another one over here she's got a bloody nose that she's covering with her hand, and this one's over there, and it's just a pile of wreckage of people. And our character, and I'm going to have her in a dramatic stance because she's still adrenalized and crazy. And she's standing in her dress, and maybe there'll be a rip in the dress now from her crazy action kicks. But she's standing here, and she's got the flowers. Okay, so there's your flower set here. And then this is the part where we have two things that we can do. Now, I haven't decided, or I haven't exampled yet, that I'm going to have a closure to this panel. I may throw a line in here, but I won't put one in behind the words because those words work as a divider line for this, the top of this panel, as they feed across from here over into this one, making the viewer's eye do this. So now we've got this arc back diagonally down into here, and having this panel here leads us down dramatically. So it takes in the whole scene. And as she says here, and I would float this behind people's heads, but she would say, it's meant to be, right? And that comes from her. But the last little fun little nod in here I want to put in is that I would arguably say, I need it for Roger and me, or whatever the potential hubby-to-be's name is, right? I need it for Bob. Let's just do Bob, it's shorter. Bob and me. It's meant to be, or we're meant to be, let's say. We're meant to be makes more contextual sense. We're meant to be. Even we're meant to be married, right? Make it as simple as you can for the viewer. But this is the drop note. And the drop note, or the punchline, is the last panel, again, slightly tilted, but regular and balanced to this one. And, there's Bob's face. So Bob realizes, oh my goodness, my girlfriend's crazy. So that's Bob, it's meant for Bob. It's I need it for Bob and me. We're meant to be married. Is, other than bam, ow, punch, geez, look out. Other than little punches of dialogue like that, it's mostly sound effects that we're using here as our text. And the sound effects. So the second thing is I'm going to switch colors. What color are you going to use, Chris? Well, I don't know. Let's try a red one. Okay. So now that we've got this laid in here, what do we have? 1 hour 30. Well, I'm not getting much practical drawing today, but at least we're walking through the creation of an action page. We've done static pages before, but we haven't done action pages. So I hope this is helping folks. And if you got any questions, shout them at me. As always, I should say that at the start of everything. I'm good with interruptions. I get back on track in a second. I got schmutz on here. I don't know what it is, but look at me. Anyways, so I've got to this red. This is a red foot-in-an-escu or foot-in-escu, whatever it's called. I got a red one. I got a brown one. I got a blue one. I got a yellow one. I found some colored ones. And I'm very excited, but I'm very, oh, what do I do with this? I want to, oh, it's so nice. I want to do this project. Anyhow. So now that I've got all these parts in here, right, this is where I start thinking about the application of text. Now, kick right here in this way establishes a continuance of this action. It's almost like here we are at the point of impact with the word kick. So kick works as in form and function. Kick also works here as a feeling of physical impact, right? Because your brain associates kick in this moment because we stuck the word there, right? You can have pow down here or punch, right? Just, you know, that's too low. So punch. So now you know this chick got punched in the face. And kick. So now you know this burger got kicked in the head. And then, you know, swat, whatever sounds you want to use. But put them into, in this case, I would put them into the image so that the words are blend in behind the individuals. So now they're rooted in the action itself, if that makes sense. If you put it over top, and this is the difference of if you have a case where you've got, let's say, Bob punches Bill. Okay, now, and you write, you know, punch right across the center of it. Okay, that has only X amount of, I'm sorry, I did that off panel. Bob, okay, punches Bill. And you write punch across the scene. Big dramatic lettering, huh? Big fancy effects on it. Oh, it looks gorgeous. That does not work as well as the same really bad drawing of Bob. Looks like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. And Bill, okay? And then you put that same piece of writing in behind. Punch. Your brain, your human brain, is going to figure out what the missing parts of those letters are. You're going to know that that's the word punch. You're just going to know. It's like when you can see certain words misspelled, but you still understand what the word is because your brain goes, oh, I know what that is. I've seen that before. So, but putting punch in behind makes punch part of the impact, whereas putting punch in front it camps it up a little bit, makes it a little bit Batman 1966, right? It takes away the impact of it. Now, even if you do this dramatic style punch right here, that's great, but again, it's a separation for this language from this image. And in fact, you're covering up some of your own image with the description of the action that's happening in the image, as opposed to using the descriptive word within the action of the image. Yeah? Okay. So, yeah, so that's why I would see putting kick in behind this person's face, right? So as kick comes in, and you know the letters are moving in behind the person getting kicked, and I've had, you know, of course the letters are going to be a little erratic as well. You know, do the letters individually and then set them up to the same size, tilt them around a little bit, and then lay that down into one layer as one word, and then put a highlight line around the edge of those and connect them as one thing, as one word that's now truly merged together. But kick, and then kick, despite being behind this person's head, goes over top of this panel line. So it's taking you inside that panel. More so than just this crazy shape of the panel goes in behind this panel. This word's going over that panel. So now you're truly merging those together. SWAT, you know, you've got your next sound effect. You can put punch right here. You can shift that over a little bit so you get half the H, right? So as this person's body is here, you got half the H. And you've got your punch placed in here. So that roots the word punch. Let me do it with this so it's a little more legible. So punch is rooted in this scene down here and behind this character. So yeah, it's a little bit of layering, but we have the capability to do this. Why wouldn't we, right? This is the affordance of opportunity that drawing a page and having to manually input all this information and having to manually insert these texts and to draw this text by hand is something that I used to do, right? Like when I'm drawing a comic, I try to, you know, put the sound effects in by hand as I'm working, but there's a limited amount of ability that I have of making different text, you know. It's just a normal thing. You can, so you've got your punch, kick, SWAT, kick being the largest of the three, SWAT still being an action thing. I mean, you could even take SWAT outside of this panel, right? And have an exclamation point here just to further that function out of the space and further that action so that, you know, now it's SWAT and it's smacked right out of the panel, right? And it just furthers that by putting that text behind there to enhance the smackdown of the panel. And then, you know, when she's got the give me the flowers, gimme, right? So then when this lady here in her abused and upset state presents the flowers, you can continue to play and have fun with this. It's your piece. Nobody gets to tell you whether you're right or wrong. I mean, you could go use some really a different type of language than the action language we're using here, or a different type of font, where you have her saying, you know, present in these sort of macabre, dripping, like the letters, let me see, like these letters are doing this. Right? Like they're just sort of draining, this person's drained out of energy and empowerment from the violence and assault and abuse of this person. So the letters are just, the bottom's broken on them and they're just sort of, it's like the ink is sliding out of the bottom of that letter. And as you do that with each of these letters, and I'm sure there's some font out there that does this, but as you do that with each of these letters, right, that's, you know, it furthers. The point of using this font is different from that font, is that it furthers the emotional context of this panel, this specific scene. Because really that's what text is supposed to do for us. So, give me the flowers, present. And then at the end, big letters, big panel, moves in behind. You know, we are meant to be married. To be, see that? That's sneaky, because you know it's the word be, because you see the first letter B, and the word B-E is be, married. So your brain fills in that it's B-E, even though the E is behind this person's noggin. We're meant to be married. And then pushing that in behind this just sort of cements the last piece of crazy. So we don't have, you know, you can run, let me think, if we've got this breaker line here or not. We don't even need to put a line up top here. There's no necessity for that. It's just, it's fine at the bottom. So there's the structure. There's a breakdown of the whole page. So there's a lot of different things happening in an action page, right? There's a lot of different actions and the different considerations that you take in that and you try to further. And I'm really pushing things to an extreme with this one. But the reasoning behind that really is to capitalize on the affordance of opportunity for you to have an extreme action moment. And considering that, so much storytelling is, unless you're doing some extreme action solid piece, so much storytelling is static. It's largely static. The few implied kinetic actions, or somebody walks across the street, somebody is hailing a cab, the car pulls up a little splash of water, so you get the impact of splash of water. But when you have the opportunity to do a fist fight or any kind of physical engagement, go for it. Go nuts. There's a comic called Zero. I'm sorry I can't remember the artist's name, but there's a specific issue in the comic Zero, and Zero, Zero, and I think it's the second to last issue in this limited series, because it's only like 8 or 12 issues. But there's a moment where our assumed protagonist and the assumed predominant antagonist, physical antagonist, there's a big bad, but then there's this physical bad that represents him in the field of action. They get into using all their Krav Maga and military training. The artist draws two people with enhanced physiques and enhanced, abilities and super normal superhero abuse and the ability to commit abuse to each other and ability to heal immediately from it. These two guys get into in comics, it's the most physical Western example I've ever seen of two people beating the holy tar out of each other with real actual moves and punches and kicks and flips. And it's as close as you're ever going to see to a real spy movie in a comic book fight that I've ever seen. But most spy stuff is all James is, and trying to interrogate the prisoner, and then they get into a fight in the bathroom, right? But at first, it's that whole standing there with a gun going, I think you know why I'm here, and holding the gun at the other guy, and he goes, well, I do understand, but maybe we can come to an arrangement. He grabs the toilet, and he hits him with the toilet lid, So action needs to be hard, brutal, and nasty, because the only time that you really want to put action into something is for the impact. So if you can make your page as impactful as you can. Okay, so that's about it for today. I'm going to sit down and have some fun scribbly-dibbling this out. I considered about doing the part 1 and part 2 of We Are Meant to Be Married. I wrote down It's Meant to Be at first as my idea for a name. The point of this is a bridal... it's a hold on a second. What's it called? Excuse me. Fight Over the Bridal Bouquet. Part 1 is catching the bouquet, and part 2 is the boyfriend's reaction. So this is our part 1. I thought about doing parts 1 and 2 this weekend. I'm going to do part 1 and let it stand on its own. And then when we come around to, because there's a couple other one-page suggestions that people have for next week that I want to do. And I got a bunch of stuff to do this weekend. So once I get through a couple of other suggestions that are put forward, then I'll come back and do part 2 of this. So there we go. Okay, so that's about it for today. Thank you very much for everybody that's joined in. Thank you very much for everybody that's come and hung out. I hope that... I had some good information for you today, and we had some good engagement today. I tried to switch my camera around a little bit today because somebody has suggested that it helps them if they're able to at least read my lips sometimes when I'm talking, because of hearing impairment for them and the fact they share a household and they can't just have their thing cranked up completely. So I'm trying. I'll figure that out as we go, right? It doesn't help when I go to the example things and take myself off screen, I realize, but I'll work out the kinks. Yeah, I hope this helps out for people today. I hope everybody's had a really good week. Thank you very much for everybody's interaction and engagement. Again, those of you that I've listed some names off, if you're able to, please send me your addresses via social media there. There's conversations there. Please do. I appreciate that very much. Hey, thanks very much, Dee. Thank you. Listening and cooking. What are you making me, Philip? Anyways. Because I want to try to get some stuff happening here and send people some things and then if people are interested in picking up stuff off the website, let me know if you have any problems. I think I got it fixed I'm going to take the advisory note that I had on there off, but I think I have it fixed so that people can order from the website now, which is, I'm really hoping that works out. So if anybody's ordering books there, that's another way I'll get addresses from people too. But I'm really enjoying the open engagement that I've been afforded to have with other creators through this process. And I really appreciate your insights and your thoughts. And I enjoy watching your shows, your streaming, and seeing what you're doing. And so I hope that anybody that watches this gets something from it. And I look forward to see what you're creating. So with that, I'll leave you to it so you can get back to doing that. Bye for now. I'll be back Monday at 2 o'clock, as per usual. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye for now.